What I love about cinema is going into a big dark room with 700 people, and through their laughter and through their surprise and through their shock and through their reactions, you realize, I'm not alone. I have the same, I'm wired into this group in the same way, just organically. That is what makes the cinema.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. Today's episode takes us behind the scenes of director David Fincher's new biographical comedy drama, Mank. In the film, 24-year-old prodigy Orson Welles hires Herman J. Mankiewicz, a scathing social critic and alcoholic screenwriter, to write the screenplay for his masterpiece, Citizen Kane. In addition to Mank, Mr. Fincher's other directorial credits include the feature films Seven, Panic Room, Zodiac, and Gone Girl, and episodes of the television series House of Cards and Mindhunter. He was nominated for the DGA's Theatrical Feature Film Award for The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, The Social Network, and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Mr. Fincher spoke with director Aaron Sorkin about filming Mank in front of a virtual audience. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Well, hello. I'm Aaron Sorkin, and I'm here with my friend and one of the greatest filmmakers who has ever lived, David Fincher. You know him, of course, from Alien 3, Fight Club, 7, Benjamin Button, a film called The Social Network.
Film
that I have fond memories of.
Yeah.
Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl, and his latest film, which is my favorite film of the year, Mank. So, David, I'm really glad to be talking to you.
I'm glad to be back talking with you. We should. I'm beginning to wonder if we shouldn't try to take this to local cable affiliate.
I think that we should, but I would want to include some musical numbers.
Oh, interesting.
We have very little time, and
okay.
I have much too much to really. If I wanted to ask you everything I wanted to ask you about Mank, we'd be here until Easter. But let's just start with this. Can you talk about how the film came to be? It's been a long time in the making.
It has. It started with a love for and of Citizen Kane, and it was certainly a film that was introduced to me by my father, who hailed it because he was an ex-journalist as the only important and relevant, American masterpiece in cinema. And I was sort of bequeathed this and saw the movie when I was probably 12 or 13 years old. And then later read the now refuted and dismembered Pauline Kael essay. And when my father decided to retire from writing magazine stories, he wanted a new task, and he very much revered that era and those screenwriters specifically. And so I encouraged him to try to write about Herman Mankiewicz, and he did. And we kind of kicked the script back and forth for many, many years. And finally, Netflix said, "What do you have that you would like to see?" And they said yes to it.
When was that?
That was about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. So it was fairly quickly on the tail of wrapping season 2 or delivering season 2 of Mindhunter.
By the way, I did not mention your television work, which is extraordinary. I've known you for 10 years, and it wasn't until Mank that I knew your father was a screenwriter.
Well, he wasn't. He was a magazine writer who'd written a couple of screenplays, but he thought it was in his explanation to me about sort of hierarchically what he was passionate about. He really felt that screenwriting was the most kind of difficult kind of drama, because again, you're leaving so much up to the interpreter who's going to take it from 2 dimensions, and you don't really know you don't really have the audience for a motion picture is a very wide swath. It's a very, so it's not so, you can't really predict what the audience is going to come in knowing, and how much you're going to have to, give them a history lesson or whatever. So to his mind, this was the people who really did it, people like yourself. He was always harping on me about West Wing. You've got to watch this, and and Goldman and Bogold, all the Goldmans, and so he really felt that this was as a tool to tell a story, or as a medium to tell a story through. He really felt that this, that for a writer, this was a way of really accessing parts of the audience's mind.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that novels are not. That's a very intimate relationship. He liked the scope and the scale of having people play dress up and pretend to be these people and have them be photographed, and then have, juxtaposition of images and music and all these other things that could be brought to bear.
I wish I had met him. He passed away 7 years before I met you.
Yes.
But I'm curious if you don't mind talking about it. When you're working on a script, when it gets to the point where you're working with a director now on the script, which is usually the last thing that happens before you go into production. You were my boss on the social network. What is the dynamic of being the boss when your father is the employee?
It's not easy. It was. Listen, we had a very odd and collegial relationship. We were very much about honesty above everything, and my father had. My father alternated between having great confidence in me and my abilities and not, and also being protective of my feelings and the downside and all that stuff. So, but generally speaking, we were, he made no bones about the fact that he thought Seven was kind of rubbish, and or at least he felt it was overtly nihilistic and therefore, limited in its later.
I'm sorry, I have to ask you, and I don't want to turn this
that's fine.
into a father-son.
It could be therapy.
How does your father say to you, I don't like Seven, it's nihilistic? Well, when does that conversation happen?
Well, he saw it at the premiere.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really disturbed by it. And again, remember, my father was the one who told me about Clute, and who said, you have to see this movie. What they do, what they do stylistically with this movie is really something. And, and I was not, as a kid, I was not allowed to go see violent movies. So a movie with a poster that had, in the poster, I think, she has the scissors in her hands and stuff. So that was, my mom was very much like, no. And I didn't get to see The Godfather until the second release because people got shot and stabbed and knives went through hands and things like that. So I never got to see Chinatown in its first release because of the violence in that. But my father was very much like, these are not yet, you're only 10s, but eventually when you see this movie, you have to see it because of I think in the case of Clute, because it's complete. It just had such a complete, he was impressed by the world that Alan and Gordon and everybody involved created. But he was also, so for instance, walking out of the premiere of Seven, he was extremely upset. He was very, and part of it was the movie is upsetting. And for a lot of people, that's a hard thing to divorce oneself from the effect of a movie on you and your feeling about it. But eventually he got to a point where he said, look, it's really effective. It's really affecting. I'm uncomfortable with the litany of violence that is visited on the people, but he was also respectful of the fact that it all happened off camera. And so it was a give and take, but he said something about I hope this isn't a reflection of your upbringing, kind of. And I would say, no, I mean, except for the movies that I saw. And then he really, really disliked Fight Club. He thought it was, I gave him the script and he said, there's just nothing funny about this. And then when he saw the movie, he said, at first he said, I don't know why you're making this. And I said, because I think it's funny. And then he was even more distraught. And then he saw the movie and he really didn't like it. And then a year or two later, he was kind of like, okay, I understand now what you were doing. So it was, at the same time that he was saying, I prefer you not to make this kind of entertainment, he was like, he could also take a step back and say,
I really do wish I'd met him.
Yeah, he was odd.
Netflix says to you, say, what do you want to do next? And you tell them this. Did you tell them at that time or did you know at that time that you were going to make it in black and white?
Oh, yeah. No, the reason that it languished for as long as it did was because nobody, this, there are these long lists of things in terms of your deliverables. Like, you actually have to go and ask permission not to mix something in 5.1 stereo, right? It's just not heard of in this day and age. The delivery specs are color, widescreen or, flat, 185 or scope, and you have to deliver either 7.1 or 5.1. So when you say, I want to do it in black and white and I want to do it in mono, all of a sudden somebody at the head of the studio has to call down the chain to the people who are doing foreign pre-sales in sell-through video, and they will say, we can't touch this. And the beauty of Netflix is that this one-stop shopping, they can go, yeah, you mean turn off 4 speakers? We can do that.
Yeah, so I agree that it is one of the many beauties of Netflix. I want to talk about the sound for a second. If it were me, which it wouldn't have been because I would never have gotten that far creatively with it. But if it were me, all I'd have been able to do is say, I want it to sound like Citizen Kane sounded. I don't know how they made it sound like that. Are we able to make it sound like that? Okay. And the fact that you know how to make it sound like that is
we didn't.
That I'm jealous of.
Initially, we didn't, and depending on who you talk to, there are certain people who are like, "Oh God, it just sounds echoey," or "It sounds all mumbly and warbly." It originally started with conversations about the effect of the movie on the audience, and one of the problems that I had with getting people to read the script was the anachronistic quality of the patois. That there were these, there are. I mean, it's a very strange thing to have John Houseman walk into a room and go, "Oh, here are all the characters who must have met each other before they got in the car and drove 4 hours to Victorville, but let me now reintroduce them." And that was one of Jack's things. Was like they did this in the movies of this era. It was not untoward to have characters, say, what is it? Good morning, Mr. Water Commissioner.
Yes.
So in an attempt to kind of stylistically trap this patois in amber, one of the ideas that I had was, what if we presented it not as was just in black and white and it's just mono? What if it's in black and white mono and it literally looks like a relic, like something that has been sitting at in the vault at UCLA and is now being sent to Martin Scorsese's house for a Tuesday night viewing, and in that, I was speaking with Ren Kleiss, who's one of my oldest friends in the world and also the sound designer on the movie. We started talking about, well, you say you want it to sound old. What is it that you mean? And this discussion began with ribbon microphones or recording. I mean, should we record to wax disc? I don't know. Like, what gives you that palpable sense of old movies? And first, it's like an equalization question. The first thing that that we did was listen to old movies, and not only Kane, but His Girl Friday, and Shock Corridor, and you put these movies up and you listen to them, and the first thing that we were cognizant of was this diminished capacity for bandwidth. There's just not as much frequency response. I mean, these are very limited technologies. So that was number one. So Ren at Skywalker took old movies and started to map them and what the envelope was able to deliver in terms of fidelity on certain spectral analysis. So you could look at it and say, we're not getting anything out of it. And it's notched. You take the whole image and you just cleave off sections of it that this technology was not able to record and store. And so in the finding out of sort of what the image was and what the EQ would be, we came up with our own little plug-in that we could, and we listened to it and it was like, yeah, it's good, but it's not quite there. And finally, in a conversation that we were having probably over a glass of wine and dinner or whatever, I said, no, it has to sound like a revival house. It has to sound like that, sitting at the Castro or sitting at the, not a man's Chinese, not a first run house, but a revival house. And what does that? And then we started to talk about, well, in older theaters, there's not the flocked or the baffled or the sound insulated fabric and padding that you have on the walls at ArcLight so we were saying, okay, so there's a little bit of that slap, there's a little bit of that echo, there's a little bit of the reverb. And then we talked about the Tamalpais Theater, which is a theater that we grew up with in Marin County, and sitting in the balcony there. And then I was like, you would hear the echo. There's no surround sound. This is pre-1976. So it's pre-stereo, pre-surround. But the sound came out of the single speaker, and then it would sort of reverberate in the room. And then we just decided, we asked ourselves, do we want to disappear up our own rectums without a flashlight and try to add this layer of and indeed we could not be dissuaded. It had to be. So we recorded the sound of a giant room and our mix playing in it.
I'm grateful that you did that last point you made, the sound of a giant room in your mix playing with it. Yeah. You told me that you after recording all the sound, mm-hmm. you then replayed the sound in a church and recorded. No,
not in a church, in a scoring stage.
Oh, scoring stage.
Yeah. So what we did was we basically in a 5.1 setup, you have L, C, and R, left, center, right, which are the three main speakers that are behind the screen mm-hmm. array. And then you have surround channels, two discrete surround channels on the side, and you have a subwoofer, and that's your total of 5. So 3, 2, 1. So 5 and 1. So we tried to mix everything for the center speaker, and it proved to be a nightmare because we're so used to the bandwidth of being able to have 96 channels, or 200 channels, however many mm-hmm. channels. I mean, we had probably, when they were mixing the music, even in a COVID friendly with sending old microphones and recording devices to each individual musician's home for them to play their part. When those tracks came back, they could be 100 channels across. I mean, so we're so used to being able to throw bandwidth at a problem just to be, but your ears can't, you put that much sound pressure and that much data through one speaker, it forces you to go. I mean, you realize why movies from the 30s and 40s are so sparse in terms of the sound, because they only had one piece of vermicelli to get that elephant through. And so they stripped everything back in order for intelligibility as much as anything. So anyway, we ended up with L and R, left and right speakers, were the sound imaging. So we spread that. In the center, we had all the dialogue, hard effects. We had a little bit of subwoofers for some car buys and things like that. And then we took that mix into the scoring stage at Lucasfilm, at Skywalker Sound. And we played that LCR mix into this massive scoring stage. And then we set up 12 microphones in the scoring stage that were all sort of period ribbony, limited technology, limited bandwidth. And we recorded the sound of the whole place. And then we put that into the surround speakers.
It's amazing. I just want one last thing about the sound before we move into the rest of the film. In addition to those technical choices that you made with the sound, I was also knocked out by the fact that when someone would walk outside and have a conversation on the porch of the cabin, they sounded like they were in a cathedral instead of outside.
That is just
perfectly, period.
Well, and your cathedral, I mean, that is for me the altar of cinema. What I love about cinema is going into a big dark room with 700 people, and through their laughter and through their surprise and through their shock and through their reactions, you realize, I'm not alone. I have the same, I'm wired into this group in the same way, just organically, and I'm picking up on all these other cues. That is what makes the cinema a great grand theater, an almost cathedral-like experience.
Okay. Casting, was it Barry all the way?
Yeah, I mean, we talked years ago, before in the 1990s, we had talked about Kevin Spacey at one point, but at the moment in time that Netflix said we would like to make this, it was scary. I mean, it's just, you know what it's like. Often you don't dare to dream, and in this case, it was like, if we're not aiming for that.
Yeah. I agree with you. And Lily was kind of a no-brainer.
Well, and it's funny because I tend to. I mean, I know what this feels like. There are times when you just go, oh, it's just too perfect, right? It's just like, and I was so Lorraine said to me, what about Lily Collins? And I was like, oh, she's lovely. I don't know. It's a little too, let's see her on tape. And then she sent in this tape, and it was like, just because it's perfect casting doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's right. And listen, I really do feel ashamed, to tell you the truth, that I was surprised as I was by Amanda Seyfried's performance. I really should have known that she could do that. She's given fantastic performances.
She
in the past.
is, yeah, and I mean, I think we all, when your job is to sit in a chair and watch TV all day and go, is this working? Is this not? Is she? When you're presented with that as a life choice, there's a tendency to reduce everything that you're watching to keep abreast of things, or even even when you get to these cut down reels of an actor's the reels that their agents send out, or even what's available at the CAA website or whatever. And there's a tendency to kind of have this like sense of, I know what that is. I know. And Amanda was somebody that I had seen her in a couple of things, and always thought she was, stunning to look at and luminous. And the question for me was, was she going to work hard, and was she going to be curious about this woman? Because I was never going to be able to, throw my arm around her in the same in the way that I have with other actors in the past. We were heading towards a start date, and I did not have a personal relationship with Amanda, did not know her socially. Mm-hmm. And I was never concerned that she didn't have the chops. I was concerned mostly that we wouldn't get her focus, and that we wouldn't have all of her attention, because she was shooting another movie and she would be walking out of that movie and literally, like, and in some cases, mm-hmm. I think she bounced back and forth maybe once or twice. Lily did that throughout, but Amanda. So my biggest question was, is she going to want to do, she's going to want to do the number of takes? Is she going to want to play in the, act for somebody who likes to work in a very specific way, which is, I want to have, and you've witnessed it, so it doesn't seem as strange to you, I think, as when people say, well, it's 100 takes. It's not 100 takes of everything, but it's a process by which you're sort of excavating what a person can do with this material in any given moment. And for me, there are certain, and a lot of this will be, you and I went through this on Social Network. It was like, my initial thing was, no Disney kids. Like, I know we have to cast young actors, but no Disney kids.
No, I remember you specifically saying that.
Yeah, because it's like the kid from the Crest toothpaste commercial. It's like, I don't want that kid, right?
Right.
What we ended up with mostly Disney kids, because they're so fucking prepared. They are so, like, ready to come and, Justin Timberlake, as he used to say,
Justin,
coach, tell me which hole to hit. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's a running back getting his reps. And Brenda, I mean, mm-hmm. even like, anyway, I had that kind of reservation. I had this sort of preconceived idea of who Amanda was, and that she was much more sort of, that it would be hard to get all of her, that it would be hard to get into her peripheral vision. And then I had a Skype with her, and she was awesome. She's super curious. She's completely plastic in the way that she thinks about things. She has no rigidity when it comes to her she has no preconceived notions. She comes into everything saying, heap it on me. Tell me where it is you think. Here's what I'm thinking. And it's all give and take. And when it got down to being on set, and you could say, okay, now I need you to take this, and I need you to be thinking about this over in here, as opposed to the text may read this way, and you may want to, but now what I want you to do is find that by the end of this paragraph of stuff, and not find it at the beginning, be illustrating, but find it as you talk. And she's, and she couldn't have been more lovely or amenable.
Well, it sure paid off on screen. You're right when you say that I've experienced 100 takes, though. It wasn't 100. It was actually 99 takes. It
was 99 takes over like 5 or 6 setups over 2 nights.
Over 2 nights.
The first setup was a lot.
First of all, yes, it was 99 takes, 5 setups, and 2 nights. I don't know who else in the world gets 2 shooting days to shoot that scene. Okay.
We were literally setting the tone for the movie, and we knew it was an important scene.
I am all for it. As a writer, what I liked about the number of takes that you did is just, the writing, and the same is true in Mank. If you aren't able to casualize it somehow, it can get operatic. And it can go bad fast. And your 99 takes over 2 nights just tired them out. It essentially had the same effect of previews on Broadway. Just casualize it. Keep doing it. You also didn't want them giving the performance they were giving in the shower before they came to the set.
I think that, look, I'm not averse to an actor saying, okay, what do I think this is? Let me work it out. Now, let me present to you, the uninitiated, all of the thoughts that I've been having about this, and I'm going to show it to you in a free-flowing, version of this performance. I'm not averse to that. The reality of that is that there's this amplified tension underneath it, which has to do with the relationship between pleasing and hoping that validation has everything that I've been applying in terms of what I think about this character. Is it correct? Is it blah 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 blah? You get into this thing with a lot of actors when you say, okay, I need another one, and what did I do wrong? It's like, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. But it's somewhere in all of that is this sense of, yeah, I want to do we've rehearsed it in a conference room, around a table. We haven't rehearsed it in a room that has a guy with a plaster cast on half of his body and this apparatus to like lift his leg and typewriters and all the stuff that has to happen in this. We haven't done that. So we're putting it on its feet the morning of.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're going to do the master, I got to do the out of town previews. I got to do the off Broadway. I got to do the Broadway, and I've got to make it be the best that it
can. That's exactly right. When I'm doing a play, we have 5 weeks of rehearsal, then 6 weeks of previews, and then we have opening night. And with the play I have now, it's on hiatus during the pandemic, like every other play. Jeff Daniels was the star. I got an email from him one night after the show saying it was a great show tonight. I really think we've got it now. And he sent me that email 5 months after we opened.
Well, you know this. You have actor friends, and you go to see them on a show on Broadway or on the West End or whatever, and you go back afterwards at some sort of, because they're always sweaty and tired and they don't really want to see you, but you show up to kind of go, dude, I was there and I really loved it. And they always say, oh man, if you could have been here Tuesday. And I always go, well, I don't want anybody to point to the movie and go, oh, you should have seen in rehearsals and now I don't know what he did. I don't know why it turned out like that.
That's exactly right.
The immortalized one is the one that just, that's the way it fell off the truck.
I was telling you before we started that I saw a video. I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, and I can't even remember how I saw it exactly.
And this is the making of, or a visual effect.
Well, it's a making of the CGI. It's a
before and
effects
after.
thing of how you did Mank, and I was amazed by how much wasn't there when you were shooting it. They'd kind of show a picture of Gary Oldman in front of a Burger King, and then it turns into old Hollywood.
It wasn't a Burger King, but look, the world has changed since the 1930s. So certainly since Herman Mankiewicz was patrolling the backlots at Paramount. I tried to have as much in cameras as possible. Try to change as little as in some kind. I think for the most part it would be 25% of the frame, maybe 30% of the frame. I try to have 75-80% of it in camera so that you can reference that when you're
right.
But yeah, there was just so much. I mean, so many vehicles that can't run anymore.
Do you, when there is, and full credit for the Burger King thing was a joke. I give full credit for what was in camera. And I'm someone. I've only used CGI for crowd duplication at this point. But do you know? Have you already decided what it's going to look like after? Or are you starting to make those decisions in post?
Mostly, it's mostly with an idea of for instance, probably one of the shots that you saw was him driving up in the car, and he gets out of the car drunk. And
at Union Station, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so it wasn't Union Station. It was written as Union Station, but Union Station 1931 had yet to be built. It was built in 36. So we were like, well, where are we going to, because Union Station is beautiful. It's deco. It's going to be, and then we found in the research that they would leave from Glendale. And I was like, there's a train station in Glendale? And they said, yeah, it's still the same way. It looks the same as it did in the 1930s. Hearst used to rent his own train to bring his friends up to.
Really?
Yeah, so there's like a 3-car train that he would, and you could take the regular one, or you could take the Hearst Express.
Hearst train.
And so I said, well, show me pictures of the Glendale train station. So they showed it to me, and I was like, this is awesome. I didn't even know it was here. But the buildings around it are entirely problematic. There's an IKEA, and there's 7 Barnes and Noble for some reason, no one knows. But they all had to be erased, and we had to bring period vehicles into it. And so we turned it over to a guy named Way, who is the most amazing matte painter. And I just said, I'm just looking for something that's sort of period deco and he came back with 3 amazing paintings, and you choose one, and then some poor person had to rotoscope, because we don't have blue screen or green screen when you shoot black and white. Somebody had to go in and, like the Incredible Shrinking Man, had to roto and make all of these mats for all these people's heads.
Talk about that. Talk about the difficulty of CGI, of color separation when you're shooting in black and white.
Well, it's become such a, there is a, sort of knee-jerk reaction to, oh, well, outside the windows, we'll just put some blue screen up, or, and for the most part, in a modern, grip truck, you'll find a couple of 20 by green screens and a couple of 20 by blue screens. Well, we made the decision in pre-production that we weren't going to shoot with a color sensor and have the ability to separate in terms of color, because the dynamic range of the image from the black and white sensor was so profoundly beautiful compared to taking a color image and just desaturating all the color out of it. It's just, it was light. They just were night and day. So once we'd made that decision, it meant that all of every time that screen door opens in Victorville, the desert that you see out there is a black and white photograph, high resolution photograph of the desert. And we shot it against white, basically just like this. We shot it as like 2 stops over exposed white. And then we would make a key, and then we would go in and put these blown out images of the desert out every window. And out every time the door opens. And even you can sort of see it in a couple of them. We put it in the reflection of the door as the glass panes as it opens. So it just means that the process of that work becomes a much more hands-on and specific artisan thing, as opposed to, we just bend the knob, take the blue out, put whatever you want there. You now have to really decide in terms of layers how you're going to, kiss that into the white.
Okay. I am about to run out of time, so I just want to go to a lightning round.
Okay, lightning round.
Trent and Atticus.
They're good.
I'm pretty sure their first feature score was The Social Network,
It
right?
was, yeah.
Okay, they won the Oscar. They also kind of, when they won that Oscar, they kind of busted down a wall in the composers branch of the Academy. They'd never, I don't think, given an Oscar to a score like that. I had no idea when you told me it was going to be 9 Inch Nails scoring a movie what that was going to end up being like. But of course, it was amazing. Also scored Gone Girl. And that I absolutely understood that was in their wheelhouse. I never would have suspected that the Mank score was also in their wheelhouse.
Here's the thing about, this. I would rather go to people that I trust, who are as hard on themselves as I am, and say, what do you think? Do you think you can do it? But by the way, if Trent or Atticus had said, this does not sound like, I would have said, oh, okay, yeah, no harm, no foul. But I went to them and said, okay, this is going to sound weird. I don't know what I'm asking you to do. I don't know what before I've always been able to give them, with Social Network, I said, I want a John Hughes movie, but circa right around the time of Risky Business so I need you to you can embrace the Tangerine Dream of it. You can embrace the psychedelic furs of it, but it has to be, for my money, the soundtrack has to remind us of technology. It has to remind us of a kind of automation. It has to be beholden to the world of computers. We talked a lot about the sound of love dial-up, and think that to work that stuff into the tapestry of this. And then on Gone Girl, I said to them, I was getting an adjustment with a chiropractor, and the music that was playing was this very strangely disembodied sort of. It was kind of like a pat on the back, like everything's going to be okay kind of music. And I said, Trent, I want you to give me the music from a chiropractor that says everything's going to be okay, but underneath it you go, it's just definitely not going to be okay. So I'm looking for placebo music, is what I said. I want it to sound like the kind of thing that you would go into, like the Hammer horror version of a chiropractor, and this music is playing, and it's basically there to assuage you, but you know that something terrible is coming. And they said, we get it, and they ran with it. And then on this, I said, I don't know if it's Bernard Herrmann. I don't know if it's. I don't know if you've got to do Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. I don't know if it should be Chariots of Fire. You tell me. And so they played around, and they came back with about, 40 minutes worth of music. And I just listened to everything and said, oh, this sounds like it goes here. This sounds like it goes here. This sounds like it. And then we laid it all up, and we showed it back to TNA, and they were like, well, this we have an issue with, but this we totally understand. And that's where the conversation started.
Okay. I hope you don't mind if I ask you what you're working on next.
I'm playing with adapting a French graphic novel about an assassin, and I am playing with Robert Town and I are trying to break a limited series on it's sort of a prequel to Chinatown, Jake Gittes' time in Chinatown with Lou Escobar, and I'm working on a show about film appreciation and about movies that I love, and with essayists I love about movies that they love. I'm 100% sure that they're going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to Robert Town's stories. David, dude, he's so much fun.
No, I know.
So much fun.
I know.
Anyway, thank you for doing this.
Mank is a masterpiece, David. It is just objectively a masterpiece. Congratulations, boss.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you soon.
See you, dude.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more, The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay tuned in the coming weeks as we bring you discussions of films from Lee Daniels, Robin Wright, and Viggo Mortensen. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find this show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.